Hello again, everybody. My channel is all about trying to get you to think about what you're doing and think about the world around you and to think critically and to challenge a little bit about some of the preconceptions you have about maybe yourself. So this week I want to talk about cause and association, and it's very relevant at the moment because there's a lot of discussion out there, probably more so than I've ever had in my lifetime, about the idea of something causing something and something being, bad for you or good for you. And I'm not going to get into the politics, because it shouldn't be political anyway, but the politics of the vaccine. But there's a lot of people out there who are confusing cause and association, and the difference between the two. So let me give you an example. If I say to you that people who wear sandals eat more ice cream, so therefore wearing sandals causes you to eat ice cream. And if I explain my logic, I'll say, well, every time I go out and I see people eating ice cream, they're nearly always wearing sandals, or a lot of them are. Well, that would make sense. That would make you to say, well, a lot of people will eat ice cream outside in the summertime, and therefore a lot of them would be wearing sandals or flip-flops, or as the French call them, Philippe Philop. And sorry, I'll move on. And so you would say, there is an association. There is an association between eating ice cream and wearing sandals. But wearing sandals doesn't cause you to eat ice cream, and eating ice cream doesn't cause you to wear sandals. So this is where it starts to get a bit confusing, because sometimes what ends up happening is that we see something and then we start to expect something from it. So we can kind of mix this in a little bit with what we're talking about with bias, that I see a certain group of people all the time, so I think everybody's like that. Another great example is the idea of alcohol or sugar. So people will say, if I drink gin, it makes me, insert emotion here, sleepy, they call it mother's ruin, weepy, or what have you. Or if I drink tequila, it causes me to take my clothes off in a bar. But for example, that's not ever happened. But ultimately, it's alcohol, and the actual alcohol, it doesn't make any difference when it gets into your system. Your body doesn't go, oh, here's tequila, so let's take your clothes off. It says that's a learned behavior. That's an associated behavior. So there may be an association with that because it's something that's happened. But the alcohol itself doesn't make any difference. You may disagree with that, but there was a really good paper where they gave people flavored alcohols, so they're essentially colored and flavored to be the flavor that they associated with gin or whiskey or what have you. And actually it was the same alcohol, it was the same strength, it was exactly the same, and they gave them all the same, and people behaved according to the taste that they were experiencing. So again, that's a behavior, and I do want to talk more about behaviors, because that's pretty much what we're all dealing with in the world of manual therapy, and certainly when we come up to after Christmas, it's all behaviors. So sugar was a great one. Parents were saying that there was this hyperactivity element as far as giving their children sugar is concerned. Now we know that sugar will give you a brief energy rush, but of course sugar gets taken out of the bloodstream pretty quickly, and it doesn't really get into the brain in that way, in that sort of form. It's a different way. So what's going on? And again, what they did was they gave some children some things that they thought were sugary, but they weren't. They were sugar-free, and actually none of the kids had sugar. And they told one group of parents that the kids had sugar, and they told another group of parents that they hadn't. And the group of parents that they told that their kids had sugar reported that there was a change in behavior, that they were manic, they were running around, and so on and so forth. But actually, none of the kids had sugar at all. So what was it? That was an expectation of a behavior that the parents had got, and so they were looking for things. And this is where it starts to get interesting, because when you look for something, you can generally find it. So if we go back to the vaccine argument, there's a website in the United States called VAERS, VAERS. And VAERS is a self-reporting site, vaccine awareness event. Anyway, vaccine awareness, I can't remember the name of it now. And it's a self-reporting website. And you can literally go on there and say, I had the vaccine and I turned into Batman. And that's absolutely fine. And so therefore, you'll see that people will have the vaccine, and then they will have an event after that, and they may even die. Well, here's the interesting thing. everybody is going to die after something. So if we were to say, right, well, let's study the number of people that had a cup of coffee and then died, or had a glass of Rioja and then died, and so on and so forth, or watched Coronation Street and then died. We don't do that. So therefore we make this link, we make this association, and we leap to the idea that there's a cause. So cause will mean that there's something that you have done or had or received or engaged in has done this. You have gone out and you have, spray painted a policeman with a glitter paint, and you got arrested. I'm really scrabbling around, but the action has caused the event that's happened. Now, there are always associations, and it's just about how strong an association might happen to be. Obesity is a great one. So there is an association between obesity and type 2 diabetes. And the association is quite strong. So there is quite a strong association between type 2 diabetes and obesity. But it doesn't cause it, because if it did cause it, then everybody that was obese would have type 2 diabetes, and they clearly don't. So we have to understand that sometimes there are strong associations and sometimes there are weak associations. Again, smoking is very strongly associated with lung cancer. Does everybody that smoke get lung cancer? No. Or respiratory disease? No. And those associations will vary, but it's very strongly associated. Drinking water is very strongly associated with going to the toilet more often, but it may not be very strongly associated with catching a cold. And so these associations are things that you can work out because they become trends. And so once you start to see a trend where X number of people had this and then this happened, and there's a consistency, then you can start to work out what those trends are and what the deviations are. And that's what statisticians out there will do. And, all play to them. It's not my thing, because the numbers are amazing. And so there's things like probability and so on and so forth. But the tendency, again, for us within our industry sometimes is to see a group of people quite often, sportsmen, sports injuries, and therefore leap to this idea that X is caused by Y, and that Z is the treatment or the approach for it. And it's not necessarily the case. It's fine in those environments, but once we start to go out into the wider world, it becomes different. So cause and association aren't the same thing, and what you have to be careful of is linking something, even if it's something you've seen quite a lot, and thinking that is the cause of that rather than it being the association. You have to put it into a bigger pile, if you like, and look at what else is going on and what other factors might be involved. If you're looking at, say, young children and around the whole MMR thing, there's a whole story around that, and I don't really want to go into it here, but in terms of what else might be reported around that, around that age. And so you have to look at all those other factors. So cause association, really interesting. Cause is not association. Association is not cause. And once you know that, you will find hundreds of examples out there on Facebook and on YouTube and in the papers as well. The assumption that because this happened after this, then that was the cause of it. That's not the case. Scratch the surface, find out more, and be careful also about what we talked about before, about your bias leaning into that, and how you might think of those things as being inextricably linked. So cause and association. If you press like and subscribe and make comments, then you will be part of the cause that will associate you with this kind of content and will get my content out to a wider audience, and therefore we'll all be happy. So do that, press like, press subscribe, do the things you're supposed to do on social media, and I'll see you next time, and take it easy.